Peter knew that Russia could not face the Ottoman Empire alone. In March 1697, he traveled incognito to Western Europe on an 18-month journey with a large Russian delegation, the so-called Grand Embassy. Peter was the first Tsar to leave Russia for more than 100 years. He used a fake name, allowing him to escape social and diplomatic events, but since he was far taller than most others, he could not fool anyone. One goal was to seek the aid of European monarchs, but Peter's hopes were dashed. France was a traditional ally of the Ottoman Sultan, and Austria was eager to maintain peace in the East while conducting its own wars in the West. Peter, furthermore, had chosen an inopportune moment. The Europeans at the time were more concerned about the War of the Spanish Succession over who would succeed the childless King Charles II of Spain than about fighting the Ottoman Sultan. Peter failed to expand the anti-Ottoman alliance. In Riga, the local Swedish commander Erik Dahlberg decided to pretend that he did not recognize Peter and did not allow him to inspect the fortifications. 3 years later, Peter would cite the inhospitable reception as one of the reasons for starting the Great Northern War. He met Frederick Casimir Kettler, the Duke of Courland. In Königsberg, the Tsar was apprenticed for 2 months to an artillery engineer. Decrees were issued on the construction of the first Ural blast furnace plants. In July, he met Sophia of Hanover at Koppenbrugg Castle. She described him. The Tsar is a tall, handsome man with an attractive face. He has a lively mind, is very witty. Only, someone so well endowed by nature could be a little better mannered. Peter rented a ship in Emmerich am Rhein and sailed to Zaandam, where he arrived on August 18, 1697. Peter studied sawmills, manufacturing, and shipbuilding in Zaandam, but left after a week. He sailed to Amsterdam after he was recognized and attacked. The log cabin he rented became the Tsar Peter House. He sailed to Texel to see a fleet. Through the mediation of Nicholas Whitson, an expert on Russia, the Tsar was given the opportunity to gain practical experience in a shipyard belonging to the Dutch East India Company for a period of 4 months, under the supervision of Gerrit Klesch-Pool. The diligent and capable Tsar assisted in the construction of an East Indiaman Peter and Paul, specially laid down for him. Peter felt that the ship's carpenters in Holland worked too much by eye and lacked accurate construction drawings. During his stay, the Tsar engaged many skilled workers such as builders of locks, fortresses, shipwrights, and seamen, including Cornelis Cruys, a vice-admiral who became, under Franz Lefort, the Tsar's advisor in maritime affairs. Engineer Menno van Cohorn refused. Peter put his knowledge of shipbuilding to use in helping build Russia's navy. Peter and Whitson visited Frederick Royce, who had all the specimens exposed in 5 rooms. He taught Peter how to catch butterflies and how to preserve them. They also had a common interest in lizards. Together they went to see patients. He arrived in Utrecht on a barge and met Stadtholder William III in a tavern. When he visited the States General of the Netherlands, he left the hall and the astonished attendees with his wig pulled over his head, according to Massey. He visited Jan van der Heyden, the inventor of a fire hose. He collected paintings by Adam Silo with ships and seascapes. In October 1697, the Tsar visited Delft and received an eel viewer from the microscopist Antony van Leeuwenhoek. After the Peace of Ryswick, he was invited by the King of England to visit him. The Dutch regents considered the Tsar too inquisitive, and this affected their willingness to help the Russians. On January 11, 1698, Peter arrived at Victoria Embankment with 4 chamberlains, 3 interpreters, 2 clockmakers, a cook, a priest, 6 trumpeters, 70 soldiers from the Preobrazhensky regiment, 4 dwarfs, and a monkey which he purchased in Amsterdam. Jacob Bruce accompanied him. Peter stayed at 21 Norfolk Street, Strand, and met with the Bishop of Salisbury, Gilbert Burnet, and Thomas Osborne and posed for Sir Godfrey Kneller. He watched the proceedings within Parliament from a rooftop window. At some time, he had an affair with actress Letitia Cross. He visited the Royal Mint 4 times. It is not clear whether he ever met Isaac Newton, the Mint's warden, who introduced milling on the coinage. Peter was impressed by the great recoinage of 1696, according to Massey. At some time, he visited Spithead, Plymouth to watch a mock battle and invited Captain John Perry. In February, he attended a fleet review in Deptford and inspected the Woolwich Dockyard and Royal Arsenal with Anthony Deane. For 3 months, he stayed at Sayes Court as the guest of John Evelyn, a member of the Royal Society. He was trained on a telescope at the Greenwich Observatory by John Flamsteed. Peter communicated with Thomas Story and William Penn about their position that believers should not join the military. King William III presented a schooner with a whole crew to Peter I in exchange for the monopoly right of English merchants to trade tobacco in Russia. At the end of April 1698, he left after being shown how to make watches and carpeting coffins. Back in Holland, he visited Harderwijk and Cleves. The embassy next went to Leipzig and Dresden, where he met with the Queen of Poland. 3 times he visited the Kunstsammlung, then Königstein Fortress, Prague, and Vienna to pay a visit to Leopold I. At Rawaruska, he crossed the border, and Peter spoke with Augustus II the Strong. Peter's visit was cut short when he was informed over the Second Streltsy uprising in June. The rebellion was easily crushed by General Gordon before Peter returned home in early September. Peter nevertheless acted ruthlessly towards the mutineers. 4,600 rebels were sent to prison. Around 1,182 were tortured and executed, and Peter ordered that their bodies be publicly exhibited as a warning to future conspirators. The Streltsy were disbanded, and Peter's half-sister Sophia, whom they sought to put on the throne, was kept in strict seclusion at Novodevichy Convent. Peter's visits to the West impressed upon him the notion that European customs were in several respects superior to Russian traditions. He commanded all of his courtiers and officials to wear European clothing, no caftans, and cut off their long beards, causing boyars and old believers, who were very fond of their beards, great upset. Boyars who sought to retain their beards were required to pay an annual beard tax of 100 rubles. In the same year, Peter also sought to end arranged marriages, which were the norm among the Russian nobility, because he thought such a practice was barbaric and led to domestic violence, since the partners usually resented each other.